We'll just go home now?
Oh,
That's cool. We'll try again. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes? All right, so you may want to get out a sheet of paper so that we're able to follow along together.
Wait, what time does this end?
It will end at 2:50. That's our plan, okay?
It's my dad.
All right, so I'm going to turn off the front set of lights so you can see a little bit better. Lois, are you kind of focused in on the screen versus like the whole front of the room? All right, awesome. All right, so this particular lecture is on horizontal forces. And our process is to simply draw the free body diagram to make the sum of forces in the x and the sum of forces in the y. To remember that our net force is equal to ma, honoring Newton's second law. And then to find what you're looking for. All right. So what I'd like to do is to start off with a problem where I'm just going to walk you through it. And then once we get to the end of that problem, I'm going to give you one and we will interactively do it together. And then lastly, I will give you a practice problem to try on your own, and then we'll check your answer. Okay? All right, so let's start with problem 1. Let's say that I have a box that is pulled across a rough surface. With the coefficient of friction of 0.56. With a tension force of 40 newtons. What I didn't do is to give you a mass of your box, so let's say that the box's mass is 12 kilograms. What would we like to know? We would like to know the acceleration of the box. All right, so that's your problem. Are you looking for washers?
Are you going tonight?
For what?
Awards.
Oh.
Please go. I need a picture with you. My mom was like, Ashley, I miss Bruce. I don't see him anymore.
Oh. Die.
And then I was like, yeah. My mom was like asking. I was like, oh, you know, he's living.
Your mother is everything.
Yeah, and she was like asking. She's like, me, Bruce, Ariana, and you should all go to Athens downtown and like
You know
have
what I love?
fun.
They're all gonna hear this.
Oh, you right. Oh well. Who's all?
You know what?
Who's all?
Back off.
Who's all?
Guy who
All
live
right,
at
so
King's
let's get our
Visit.
free body diagram going on. I have a box on
I
a
don't even think a lot of
surface.
people watch the
So
video
here
anyways.
is said box. What's the first force acting on the box?
Gravity.
Gravity pulls it down.
Good job, Lois.
Call that FG or FW, that's your choice. It tells me that somebody's pushing or pulling the box. Since it doesn't tell me which way, I'm going to make the assumption it's to the right so that that keeps it positive for me. We will call that, did it say a tension force? Or did it say, yep, it said a tension force. So we'll call that FT. What other forces are acted on the box?
Normal.
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 I heard friction and normal, and you are both right. So first of all, we know that normal is perpendicular to the surface, supporting our box. And we know that friction is opposite to what?
Tension.
It is going to be opposite
Apply.
to tension, but what is it really opposite to? What are we looking for?
Apply.
Nuh-uh. It's opposite to the motion.
Oh.
So in this case, it's also the applied force or the tension force, but you've got to think about which way the object is moving, and that kinetic friction is in the opposite direction. So let's assume for a moment that it's a little bit smaller. You notice I tried to draw that vector a little smaller than that one. I'm anticipating that it's going to accelerate in the other direction. I don't know yet because I haven't put my numbers in, but that's my anticipation. All right. So step 1, free body diagram. Check. Now, the nice thing about a horizontal problem is that there are no vectors that are off the axes. Everything's perfect. So there's no reason to do components. We just go from this place. And then we're going to do our sum of forces in the x and sum of forces in the y. Let's change colors for fun. Sum of forces in the x and sum of forces in the y. So as I look along the x-axis, I'm going to do the big minus the little. This one in my anticipation is big minus little, or right minus left. So it should be the tension force minus the frictional force. And then as I look along the y direction, it should be the difference in these two. So we'll say the normal force minus the weight force. And then looking at my steps, the next step is I'm going to consider the acceleration. I want to consider that the net force is not only equal to what I find in the picture of the free body, but it's also equal to Newton's second law, which is ma. So that means that Ft minus the friction force is equal to ma. With the acceleration, if you want to put a little x, it's the acceleration along the x-axis. And this one, the normal force minus the weight force, is equal to ma with the acceleration along the y-axis, if you want to put a little y to remind yourself. Is there a direction that you don't think, or you're pretty sure it's not accelerating? The y-axis. So that means right here, if my acceleration is 0, I can simply say that that equals 0. So now what I want to do is to plug in any numbers that I know. As I was peeking at the problem, I know the tension force is 40 newtons. So I can plug in a 40 right there. I also know the mass was 12 kilograms. I can plug in a 12 right there. And I know I'm looking for the acceleration, so I'm going to go ahead and write that variable in because I know that's what I'm about to find. So I need some information on my frictional force. I don't have it yet. Let's see what we can do with our weight. We know that the force of weight is equal to mg. And if my mass is 12, what would my weight force be?
120.
120. 12 times 10 is 120. You're always welcome to use 9.8 if you prefer. That's kind of where we're at. Now, if I wanted to, I can look at the picture and know that if these are balanced, if this is 120, that must be 120. But notice also that I can plug it in here. And I can say, all right, the normal force is equal to, and I add this to the other side, the weight force. And if the weight force is 120, then that tells me that my normal force is also 120 newtons. So the net force equation is a little more official. When it is super simple, you can just look at the diagram and see they're equal to each other. But I'm still going to encourage you to use this method because when it's not super simple, this will save your behind. Okay? All right, so let's go back and see if we can substitute in now. I have a normal force, and this is a friction that I'm looking for. So let's take what we know about friction. Friction is equal to mu times the normal force. So in order to find that frictional force, I'm going to take the mu, which I believe was given to me as 0.56. I'm going to multiply it by the normal force, which we found to be 120 newtons. I'm going to let y'all do the calculator work for me.
67.
67 newtons. Interesting. Well, my problem is a little odd, and that as it turns out, this one is bigger than that one. That's just the way it turned out. It's a little bit odd. Okay? But since 67 is bigger than my tension force of 40 newtons, that's the way it actually is. And so let's plug in our friction force. Our frictional force is 67 newtons. So right here I have minus 67. And I'm going to transplant this little equation. I'm going to bring it right down here so we'll be able to work with it, okay? So 40 minus 67 gives me negative 27 is equal to a mass of 12 times my acceleration. So I'm dividing both sides by 12, and I will find that my acceleration is negative how many meters per second squared?
Negative 2.25 or 2.6 or 2.3. And we're done.
It's okay to be retarded. Oh,
Yes.
so how do you know when like Fn and Fw are balanced or when they're not?
You want to think about the object. This is a box on a table. So if you literally thought about this your box sitting on the table, and what's happening is I'm pushing the box across the table. You will notice that by nature boxes do not jump up in the air, nor do they like cave down in like there was an earthquake or something. So I can be confident that the only real motion, the only real acceleration is left or right for the box.
Yes.
Okay, so it's just like the nature of the beast. You kind of have to know a little bit about the actual object and what's going on with it.
But if it's not like, if it's not moving left or right, then that's when it's not like.
Yeah, so what I know here is that the up and down forces are in equilibrium. They are balanced because it's not going to accelerate that way or that way, okay? However, these two forces are not balanced because it tells me it's accelerating in one direction. So we know one is bigger than the other. And as soon as you know how much bigger it is, that is your net force, and it equals ma.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, how we feeling? Not too bad? All right, let me give you one.
Goodbye. You have all A's except for one.
Me?
Except for
All
one.
right, let's see if we
Never
can
done.
make it a
Except
little
for
less
one
wordy.
C.
And we'll also see if we can make it so the friction's not bigger than the pull, because that was a little off. All right, so let's say now we have a car of mass 2,500 kilograms.
So me when I
It's
eat everything.
pulled by a tow truck. With 1,400 newtons of force to the right. The acceleration of the car is 2.5 meters per second squared. What is mu? All right, as you're looking at that, I gotta think through to make sure I gave you all the information you need. Should be good. Same process as before. Step 1, free body diagram. And as you're finishing up your free body, I'm going to draw mine on the board so you can compare it. Step 2, sum of forces in the X and sum of forces in the Y. All right, mine, so you can compare. Step 3, your sum of forces is also equal to MA.
Exactly. See? Exactly. I'm getting 7,000. Wait, for the friction. So you add this to this. Oh, can you subtract my now? I will let you okay, I got 4,850. Yeah, but that's
Which of the two accelerations is 0, X or Y?
Why?
why? What? Oh yeah, you're getting negative. Does that make sense? Like, to get negative friction?
Now we start plugging in the numbers that we know.
Me. I don't know why you're saying that as if I didn't know that. I'm getting negative. Am I doing this wrong? What did you get? What did you get? Can you wait? Can you wait? We're still being recorded. I know. Making a fool of ourselves. Did you get negative 1.94? I got 1.94. What am I doing? Oh, I'm not even. I cleared it.
I mean, yeah, the normal.
Oh, did I have to? Thank you. That would have been terrible. All right, thank you, Josh.
Zero. Wait, what?
All right, so my applied force was
everyone already knows I say it all the
1,400
time. I'll kill myself. I say it all the time.
minus U normal force,
Did you not get
mass of 2,500
what am I doing wrong?
times an acceleration of 2.5.
What? Did you get 4?
So this
Did you
is
get
the big
4,850
equation that
as your
lets us
friction?
solve what we're looking for.
Yes. And then your normal is 25. What? I did the same thing as you. Does that make a difference? No. 25, 123 is the 3. Oh, I did too. Good job. Okay, you're right. See, I did it right then.
All right, so when I take this down here, I'm gonna change colors so we can find it. So I've got 1,400 minus mu that I'm looking for times my normal force of 25,000 is equal to 25 times 25 is 625. 2 zeros.
Alex, what'd you get from you?
That look right? No, there's a
Which
decimal. Is it here?
It's negative. That face value. We know.
Yep, there's a decimal. All right, so I'll just take the 0 off so we don't get scared.
Can you even have a negative value?
subtract the 1,400 on both sides. We got an answer.
We got
Negative
.194, but I think it's
0.194.
negative, right? Yeah.
Yes, next.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, she didn't get the same thing as us.
So I've got 4850 divided by 250, 194.
Negative 0.194?
Where did your negative come
The
from?
frictional force, we got negative.
Yeah.
See,
Is it
over
like-
over there, because you have...
You have negative 1400 over 48.
Because the force is to the left, that's where you're going. Okay. And so when we do a mu, not only is it unitless because it's just a ratio of newtons to newtons, but it's also going to be a positive. So we'll just take the absolute value.
Okay.
Wait, what did you say? Can you repeat that?
It's absolute value.
Yes.
Oh, it's absolute value?
So
Yeah.
not only is mu always unitless, no newtons because it was Newton divided by Newton, but it is also going to be the absolute
got it.
value. So yeah, so if we want to put the negative there, then we can just take the absolute value and it's also
You know
negative.
how it said 5.6 kind of quick?
Yes.
Yeah, but we're not getting. She said we're not.
All right, so it's this one right here. We did our sum of forces in the x. So we did right minus left here. And then we know that not only is the sum of forces based on the free body, but the sum of forces is also Newton's second law, which is Ma. So then I just brought this part down and set it equal to Ma. And then we're just making substitutions for what I know. So I knew that number, I knew that number, I knew that number. And so now I'm just substituting in for my frictional force is mu normal force, which is the other formula right there for friction.
Are you coming tomorrow?
Any other questions on that problem? All right, so now I'm going to be very quiet. I'm going to do one more problem to set you up. I'm not going to help you at all. I'm just going to tell you the answer at the end, okay?
Oh, I'm kidding.
See if you got it.
Like, they'll make it better, but... I don't think she's
All right, so let's say,
actually gonna watch the whole video. I hope she doesn't. I pray she doesn't. Let's just take the wheel. And we see that tomorrow for my test for math. Are you staying after tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow as well.
Are you staying after tomorrow?
For what, physics?
I can't because I have an art club meeting.
You,
Are you staying after?
most likely.
I have a meeting. I need an hour. I have run. Why did you do art? The court is really pretty. It's like rainbow. you. I think that's it. We're leaving. She said the answer is 1.5, so you might
No
not.
matter what. And then some of that you can, $70 at once or something. if you want to.
I know.
And possibly,
What are you thinking about?
if I ask you that for the frictional force.
You got an 83 on the quiz.
Okay.
Camera's still going.
Okay, don't act like you don't know what I
If I
got.
ask you for the
Don't say it out
frictional
loud.
force, then make
People
sure
can
that
say
you-
it.
If you need the normal force, then you should do the
This
sum
is
of
from my
forces
mother
if you
since
want.
she's like, oh, where's
Okay, so
Bruce?
don't shortcut too much.
Oh, we love that.
What you got?
I love it.
How does it look?
Beautiful.
Ew. So ugly.
He says hi.
And I need help.
Oh, me. 1.5. Oh.
What'd you get? I'm still doing it.
You can get all set. Okay, cool. All right, you ready for answers? Or you want to wait a minute?
Wait.
1 minute, okay.
Oh.
Take baby.
Yeah, and I feel like killing myself.
Me.
What? Oh, I keep forgetting your video. Why are you getting negative? What are you doing, Bruce?
It is negative, but like I just took it absolutely out.
Feel a little better, guys?
How's that negative?
Awesome, you're welcome.
Can exclamation be negative?
Yes, it can.
Okay, because I got negative 1.5 meters.
It's gonna have to be because I had a lot of, well, I didn't have enough pull on this one.
How do you know if it's negative?
It's,
I have 20 newtons minus 66 newtons
That looks
equals
really good.
38. And negative 46 over 30.
Those are both
Negative.
good. Good job. That's it. You're good to go.
I'm living best.
It's almost at 30 minutes. It's almost not that long.
It's been this long.
Well, this is what, that's what this is, the beginning of the net force that you know.
I'm taking
how to
the
write
December
those
one. You are
equations.
too, right?
AC's
And then it just gets a little
I'm gonna
more
take it like twice.
complicated, but you're still going through the same process by writing the same two equations. So maybe tomorrow.
I need a 1400.
Once you have an incline to look at.
I even
You
when Val
guys, how do we feel about the answers?
Green.
Feel a little bit better? Now the process does not change, okay? This whole like draw the free body, do the two sum of forces, that equals MA, that process never changes. So you're just gonna keep going through that same process for every kind of problem, even though sometimes your net force equations get a little bigger. They're a little longer, there's a little more parts to them, but the process doesn't change, okay? Any general questions before I say take off? Then take off.
You want to get rid of us?
Have a great day, guys.
You get up to call.